Back to the rest of the teams. I do believe we have Urshifu Rapid Strike on both sides. Both of them are going to be Terra Water. Looks like all four same moves. So that seems about right. We have Amoonguss as well.
One side opted for Amoonguss, the other for Rillaboom.
Both of them have Amoonguss.
Oh, wait, they do?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
So it's an Amoonguss Urshifu Rapid Strike mirror. No Incineroar on Kenneth's side. No fire type whatsoever or anything like that.
I think on Kenneth's side, you just have like the damage mitigation from Vessel of Ruin. You have like the Iron Defense, and you have just plenty of options that can just take out an Urshifu pretty easily. So you don't have to worry about getting crit through. Through Dauntless Shield, through your Iron Defenses.
Speaking of Dauntless Shield Zamazenta, again, we did have Mikhail Kelsch win Stockholm with a Zamazenta that did not have Iron Defense. This is Iron Defense Zamazenta coming out of Kenneth.
I think an interesting thing to note about both of these teams is one side being a Terrapagos team, the other being a Zamazenta team. Both of them have endgame options that they want to go into. You have Iron Defense Body Press as like an endgame you can play into with Zamazenta. You obviously have like the Urshifu and Rain that you can play into as well as like another option. But both sides have a sort of endgame that they can play too. With Terrapago setting up the Calm Mines, or in Kenneth's case, as you can see here, Iron Defense Body Press. You have interesting to note that the Ting Lu actually skips Ruination on this set.
Yep. It's just going for consistent damage on all of its moves, so it just has 3 moves that can hit. So no accuracy checks or anything, and then obviously Protect is just Protect.
I would say I'm curious about Heavy Slam on Ting Lu, but Fluttermane is still a pretty common Pokemon, so...
Yeah, and like Ting Lu is just heavy enough that it doesn't really have another Steel move. Like, Heavy Slam is just generally going to be better than Iron Head most of the time, because you're not flinching anything anyway. So it kind of just makes sense. Looking at Brendan's team, we have the setup Terrapagos, Screamtail, Encore Disabled, basically just doing the same thing it's always been doing since like Reg B. Incineroar, Safety Goggles, makes sense. Terra Ghost to beat Fake Out. Amoonguss, Terra Water, Rocky Helmet. It's kind of just his bread and butter in the format right now.
Interesting thing on the Amoonguss is actually Sludge Bomb on the set over, I believe, what's normally Protect.
It looks like most of the Amoongusses today have been skipping Protect. That could be a pretty big thing.
I feel like it's a really big case of opportunity cost, because that also means like Amoonguss, as much as we like to believe that it's very bulky, it's one of those where it's like its longevity comes from Regenerator rather than like its ability to take repeated hits. It takes repeated hits because it keeps coming in because of Regenerator.
As the format kind of continues to adapt and evolve, especially once you get into the single restricted formats, you build Pokemon like Incineroar and Amoonguss and even Rillaboom to a point where a lot of these defensive pivots are only going to be able to, you build them to take basically 2 hits and then faint. Amoonguss, sometimes you can stretch it out to 3 with Regenerator or whatnot, but typically you're going to be building them a lot squishier. So a lot of times that's why a lot of players have gone for Protect, because you can't really always count on your Amoonguss living double ups anymore, just because of the raw power of a lot of the threats presented. These players, Kenneth has opted for Protect on his Amoonguss. Brendan has opted for no Protect on his Amoonguss.
I am pretty sure that Brendan is playing on the Resident Evil 4 Chainsaw controller.
All right. Very interesting.
Not a fight stick today, but definitely an interesting controller regardless.
It's definitely
I am a huge fan.
It's definitely a stick you can fight with, though.
True. I would not want to bring a chainsaw, I would not want to go against someone in a fight that had a chainsaw.
Yeah.
All right. Now getting into the battle.
So we see Zamazenta Ting Lu. All right, so just a big old ball of bulk coming out from Kenneth. We see Urshifu and Amoonguss coming out from Brendan.
If you're Kenneth in the situation, you love this lead because you can just the Zamazenta's Terra Grass, it can't be put to sleep. You have a pretty safe Iron Defense if you really want to go with that here.
Yeah. So the Amoonguss, the big modifier is the Amoonguss here is just kind of what is it going to be able to do, because you have kind of free spores, but Kenneth has reasonable switches or terrestrialization. Like the Urshifu has a pretty safe pivot out, but you could also just choose to get aggressive because you have a lot of Surging Strikes damage into Pokemon. So it's going to be interesting to see, just how these players want to adapt the opening turns because neither team is particularly aggressive. So we're going to see a switch out from Ting Lu.
Probably the Amoonguss is what I would hazard a guess of.
That's going to be an Urshifu switching in. So that's honestly pretty acceptable terms for Brendan. We're going to see a Terrestrialization come out from the Zamazenta. So that's going to be Terra Grass on that Pokemon. So it's going to shed its neutral damage to water, so it's going to be able to resist Surging Strikes for the rest of the game. So we're going to see Surging Strikes go down into what was the Ting Lu, now is the Urshifu slot, deal a little bit of chip damage, and then we'll just have to see what the Zamazenta and Amoonguss are going to be up to.
I do think if you're Kenneth in this situation, that this turn could not have went any it was about the best it could have went for you. Yeah, you're gonna lose your.
We do see Spore go into the Urshifu slot, so it's not. Didn't get off scot-free, and the Amoonguss having Sludge Bomb does come into play here because even with resolving the Iron defense, it's still the Zamazenta is still going to be able to. It's only going to be probably a 3-hit knockout onto the Amoonguss.
It's just with a Scarf Urshifu into a Zamazenta.
Yeah. So like,
it's like the Amoonguss is the only thing that's actually putting out damage here.
For the most part, yeah. And it's going to take forever for the Terapagos to actually get set up. So it's going to be. Kenneth should still be pretty happy, but he's not completely out of the woods just yet. We'll just have to see how Brendan chooses to adapt.
Oh yeah, I still think overall turn 1 was like actually very strong for Kenneth here. And if you were to sack something to sleep, I think the Urshifu isn't half bad as an option, just because I mean if you have Pelipper in the back on Kenneth's side, then you don't worry about the Amoonguss whatsoever.
Yeah.
If you have Pelipper in the back now,
so we're gonna see Rillaboom switch in. It's that grassy terrain. The Amoonguss is gonna go for Rage Powder. I am not super certain that that was really gonna do anything because the Zamazenta ignores Rage Powder. Honestly, I really just think a Sludge Bomb probably would have been better regardless. That being said,
they could have forgotten about the interaction because I know that's one of those that like it's easy to forget sometimes. It's like how the Prankster into Dark types can be sometimes.
Yeah, so that's something that he may have just not been aware of the interaction, and that interaction hasn't come up yet. Because the Urshifu was not going to be able to attack that turn either. So that being said, basically you're just down you're down a Sludge Bomb. Could have been a Protect on the Zamazenta too, so ultimately is what it is. So we're going to see a switch out of the Urshifu into the Pelipper. So that's going to set Rain, and the Pelipper is going to be a pretty potent threat into both of these Pokemon. We're going to see a Fake Out go into the Zamazenta. So we're going to get a Flinch and a Sludge Bomb in. That's really good damage from the Amoonguss. Stabs, same type attack bonus. Sludge Bomb is a lot of damage. Get a little bit of grassy terrain recovery. Not getting the poison is very, very big there because poison would have basically just put the Zamazenta on a permanent clock it's only going to be able to recover so much with the grassy terrain. So
if you're in Kenneth's position, I actually think you want to try to do what you can to get the Pelipper to get the Amoonguss out of here, because like you were saying, if Sludge Bomb hits poison on the Zamazenta, then all of a sudden your in-game win condition that you seem to be playing to is then on a timer that you can maybe you have to get 1 or 2 KOs with, and you can pretty easily play around with attack.
Part of the thing for Kenneth is that is going to be a helping hand. Body press into the Amoonguss at +5. That is just a one-hit knockout into the Amoonguss. Holy moly! That is
one way to get around the Amoonguss, huh?
Yeah, just plow right through it. Okay. Yeah.
Today I learned the bird with wings
gets
helping hand.
Yeah. Pretty cool. But yeah, so
the more important thing now is if Brendan has Terapagos in the back, it's a +5. It's a +5 body press. Even if you Terrasilize, I don't think that's going to change anything.
Yeah. Even if you don't Terrasilize, it's not going to do anything because of the type manipulation of Terra Shell. It's not going to live this.
It's actually a really strong presence that Zamazenta has right now.
Yeah, the Zamazenta is so Brendan's not completely out of the game at this point. But that being said, it's going to require a little bit of sloppy play from Kenneth
It's definitely a very scary situation to be in.
Yeah, like Kenneth should be very happy with the position he's in right now. But that being said, the game isn't necessarily over. So we'll just have to see, what Brendan's going to come up with to try to get back into this game.
I definitely think faking out the Zamazenta to stop it, like, from doing as many, like, basically it's what we saw last round with the Miraidon, is if you can stop it from actually putting out its, like, really big damage,
Yeah.
then it's, yeah, you can't get hit by a bus if you stop it from moving.
Part of the problem is that Brendan doesn't really have the same threats into the Zamazenta, because the Zamazenta doesn't really have anything to fear right now, is the issue. Miraidon last game did have, or a couple rounds ago, did have something to fear in that there were things that were faster than it that could knock it out, or like Calyrex Ice Rider that could knock it out. Here, the Zamazenta, basically, as long as it doesn't get knocked out this turn specifically, it's kind of just going to be able to click body press into things, and with a +5 defense stat, it's just going to be destroying whatever it hits. Like, it already just plowed through the Amoonguss. So we do see the Terraform 0 come out from the Terrapagos Terrestrialization. That is going to remove the grassy terrain, remove the rain one time. So we're going to see a Fake Out into a Protect. Tinglu was switching in over Pelipper. So what is the Terrapagos going to be going for? Calm Mind.
If you're in Brendan's situation here, I actually think that Zamazenta protecting is... It's a good chance to get a Calm Mind set up.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was basically a free turn. Like, okay, so if the Pelipper stayed in, it wasn't necessarily a free turn. However, with the Terrestrialization, you were going to get to remove the rain anyway, which makes Hurricane not...
You force the Pelipper to try to hit the Hurricane raw.
Yeah, exactly. So it ended up being a reasonable turn for Brendan, but the Zamazenta is also just the fastest thing. It's not really under threat from the Urshifu, aside from, like, a critical hit, close combat, or U-turn. So 96% of the time, it works every time.
Oh yeah.
And in this case, with it being set up so much, and then even if you knock out the Zamazenta, you still have to knock out everything else. So, it's still very much an uphill battle for Brendan based off of how the first few turns went. But we're going to see a switch out of the Rillaboom, switch in for the Urshifu, and we're going to see what Kenneth does for his turn. We're going to see a Body Press into the Terrapagos, and then what is the Tinglu doing?
Heavy Slam.
Yeah, we'll just see a Heavy Slam. Gets a little bit of chip damage. Every little bit of damage adds up. But yeah, basically at this point, the game is going to be basically decided this turn by does the Urshifu... If the Urshifu can get a critical hit into the Zamazenta, then... Or U-turn, I guess. I really don't think you can click anything else and not expect to just get blown up by Body Press.
Yeah, it's +5.
Yeah, it's +5. There's no Terra Shift and there's no Terra Shell on the Terrapagos base form.
And then same type attack bonus. It's off of...
Yep. So we're going to see Surging Strikes go into the Tinglu. Just trying to get a bunch of damage down. Tinglu's going to eat that pretty well.
There's also a chance that the Zamazenta just lives the Terra Starstorm because of...
Yeah, because of the Vessel of Ruin ability. But we're going to see a Body Press go down, and I would assume that probably dealt 3 to 4 health bars. Probably.
I would say 2.
That's a lot. A lot of damage. Regardless...
All you need to do is just empty the health bar once, though,
yeah,
you're fine.
Exactly. One was all it takes. So, yeah, Kenneth is going to be cruising along a little bit in this game. So for Brendan, he's just going to have to look forward to Game 2 to see what is he going to be able to do to potentially, disrupt the game plan of this Zamazenta. Because if the Zamazenta is just allowed to click Iron Defense multiple times each game and then click Body Press on unimpeded.
I think if you're Brendan in this situation, I think your adjustment might be, like you were saying, finding ways to stop the Body Press or the Iron Defense from going off.
Yeah.
I think if you're in Brendan's scenario, I think Screamtail might actually be worth an option to bring, because you would rather deal with the +1 Body Press than you would +3 or +5.
Exactly. And plus with the speed boost, you also look at sometimes, like, they just can't click Body Press ever. And then you still have like encore disable type stuff where you can encore them into, say, body press, for example, and then just disable it. And then they have to switch out, or they can struggle. So, like, you know, there's ways around this. But it just looks like Kenneth's game plan was pretty straightforward. Just try to get the Zamazenta. Even one body press would have been good for a start. But just getting just getting that one-hit knockout was just absolutely massive. I also think that if the Amoonguss had clicked Sludge Bomb instead of Rage Powder the one turn, I think that would have also been a difference, because then you're taking another flyer on potentially getting a poison or a critical
Not
hit
only
or
that,
something.
but the first one did almost half.
Yeah, it was like,
and you would have put the Zamazenta in range where even like
Urshifu
and Rain could have picked it up.
Might have been able to clean that up. So hopefully just looking for Brendan to clean up his play a little bit. You know, obviously we'll see how he adapts. He has he's going to have some sort of specific game plan into this.
I think this is an interesting dynamic to talk about, specifically in a matchup of Terrapagos versus Zamazenta. Is one of Zamazenta's best matchups is Terrapagos, just because it can't tear off of its old typing.
Specifically, the Calm Mindset is very, very good. Specs, the Choice Specs item Terrapagos is a lot different matchup. There was a camera match at the Stockholm stream earlier today where Choice Specs Terrapagos ended up, I believe, beating a Zamazenta, or it either beat it or barely lost to it, but not because of that specific matchup. So the Terrapagos can kind of get around the matchup, but the Calm Mindset, it just takes way too long to really get set up. So I'll be interested. It might actually just be one of those instances where you just don't want to bring it, but it's such a focal point of this type of team building that you might just have to bring it. So we'll see. It looks like, yeah, both players are getting set up for game 2. You can see Brendan cycling through his options on his chainsaw fight stick. Very, very on theme for, he picks a theme and sticks to it. I respect it. So
I just noticed as well, all of Brendan's Pokemon have V names.
Interesting.
I saw it earlier that the Rillaboom was named Verdigris, and I'm just like, I know that term from somewhere.
Very nice. Some of them are colors. Vermilion is a color. Verdigris is, I think that, I don't know. I recognize it, but I
recognize it from another game.
I don't recognize what it's from, though. Regardless, for Kenneth's game plan, I honestly think that probably just more of the same is fine.
Oh yeah,
I don't
Zamazenta clearly showed its worth there.
Yeah, it ain't broke, so don't fix it. And if if Brendan shows that he has some sort of adaptation that changes things, then you work on that. But for now, considering how dominant that was, I really think that Kenneth is just going to probably stick to this very similar game plan.
Looks like we pretty much are in a similar lead from Kenneth.
We get the Zamazenta. It was Zamazenta Ting Lu last time. So we see a switch up from both players. The Terrapagos leading, and then we also see the Screamtail leading. So a full change up from Brendan and a half change up from Kenneth.
The only scary thing about if you're going with the Encore Disable strategy with Screamtail, the scary thing is you have to actually let the Zamazenta set up if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Alternatively, they can always just click Iron Head into you.
Yeah.
If you're Brennan in the scenario, them clicking Iron Head into you isn't so bad, because if you encore them into that means they're not clicking their boosted fighting move that scales off of their boosted defense.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see just what happens. This is actually a very good lead for Kenneth as well, adapting to the fact that Screamtail was probably the major changeup. We can see a Dazzling Wing come out and very good damage. We're going to see a U-turn out. One of the big things that Screamtail does really, really well in other formats that it couldn't exactly do right there is protect to scout out what your opponent is doing. A lot of times you're able to just click Protect because things can't hit through Protect, but as it turns out, Urshifu has this really neat signature ability called Unseen Fist.
It's crazy how that's on just...
Oh, we see a Behemoth Bash come in, and the Screamtail lives it. Holy moly. But yeah, so like Protect stalling out stuff is one of the ways that you end up being able to that's one of the ways you're able to get your Encore Disable lock started.
There's a reason why they're out there and we're up here.
Yeah.
I saw the team sheet, I saw Iron Head, and I'm just like, isn't that an error? And I forgot about the specific mechanic that if the Zacian or the Zamazenta have their specific signature held item and have Iron Head on their moves, that it actually becomes
Yep.
their behemoth move of choice.
Yep, so basically it just gets an extra 20 base power since there are no Dynamax Pokemon in this format, as far as I'm aware. You know,
Someone will break the meta with a Turnamax sooner rather than later.
hopefully not, but you never know. So that being said, we're going to see a Terrassalization come out from, I believe this is Kenneth's character. Yep, so we're going to see a Terrassalization on the Zamazenta, going to Terra Grass. Makes sense.
What I was talking about with last game and as well here, I think an important thing to note is actually that you're doing that less for like to be immune to like a specific thing in terms of like an actual damaging move, or I guess in this case resistance. You actually want to do this so that the Moongus can't shut you down completely.
Yeah. Yep. So we're going to see Encore come in, Behemoth Bash with random targeting due to the Encore, unless they targeted the Amoonguss automatically, I don't know. But that's just going to be a Hurricane and a Behemoth Bash coming down on the Amoonguss, which should be a knockout. Yep, that's going to be a knockout into the Amoonguss. So the Zamazenta is locked into, it has to use Behemoth Bash from here on out until it switches out. But honestly, that's not the worst thing in the world for it.
It's still a 100 power steel move, and Zamazenta doesn't have the world's worst special or world's worst physical attack.
Yep, and there's no Intimidate or anything like that, so
so far from what we've seen, yeah, there's no Intimidate.
Yeah, I mean, Kenneth just doesn't have an Intimidate Pokemon on his team, so it works. So it ends up working out okay. That being said, this is an interesting turn because the Terrapagos, you would think it wants to set up, but it could be an opportunity to try to get a cheeky attack off.
I think if you're Brennan in a scenario, I think you take advantage of the fact that it's not able to click Body Press, and if you can get a really strong Terra Starstorm off, specifically if you Terra Stellar, then you can take advantage of it, Stellar moves being super effective into opposing Terrastalized Mons, which is a scenario you don't really see too often, actually.
True.
You only see it with Terrapagos, and like you've seen it with a couple Terra Stellar Mons in Regulation F.
Yeah.
We're going to probably see it happen here, where...
Yeah, we see a Terrassalization come out. If it went for Terra Starstorm, though, it's not really going to do that much damage because it's unboosted, not Choice Specs, and there's a Ting Lu now. So I'm going to be curious to see... Okay, so we cut the rain.
I think it'll at least be a decent enough amount, I think, where...
So we get a Disable into... Oh, okay. So we were getting a Disable into the Pelipper slot, trying to read a Wide Guard, possibly. We're going to see a Behemoth Bash go into the Screamtail, and the Screamtail gets knocked out. And it's going to be a Calm Mind.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So the Terrapagos is now starting to get set up. So, you know, it's game on for Terrapagos now. The problem is that at +1, it's still really not going to deal that much damage. We see the Urshifu come back in. So
the problem is, you have to count Encore turns right now. I think the Zamazenta has one turn left of Encore.
Yep, the Zamazenta has one more turn of Encore
You
left.
need to make this turn count if you're in Brendan's scenario. If you can't get the Zamazenta off the field, then this situation gets a whole lot more dire because it can click Body Press.
Yep. So this is still going to be a pretty difficult position for Brendan to try to get out of. Again, getting the Calm Mind set up is cool. But the Screamtail really didn't end up accomplishing anything this game. And that was what we were theorizing was supposed to be the way to try to get back around this.
I kind of disagree on that a little bit because you're in a position right now, at least, where the Zamazenta is not like actually clicking Body Press. I agree with swapping out there just because, like, I think Kenneth knows that, like, Terra Starstorm was the thing he was trying to, like, force damage with.
Yeah.
Not only that, you're also getting...
Okay, so we get a knockout here, so that's important.
You get the Encore reset.
You'll be able to take a Body Press at this point, and this is a +1 Terra Starstorm, but it's into a Ting Lu. Ting Lu is a pretty... it's going to take more than that to knock out the Bull Moose.
I think it's going to be more of that you've weakened the Urshifu's defenses now.
Yeah.
To where that can clean up. It can be... That's... The Urshifu's going to be easy to clean up afterwards.
Yeah. Ultimately, that was still a reasonable turn for Brendan. He might actually be back in the game at this point. The Pelipper is still going to be in play as well, though. And with the Urshifu at -1...
It's Scarf Locked, actually, into...
It's Scarf Locked into close combat for the rest of the game. So it'll be able to hit the Ting Lu and probably knock it out at this range. So we see Zamazenta come back in.
An interesting thing to note is the shift from Pokemon Sword and Shield to Scarlet and Violet actually saw balance changes be put to Intrepid Sword and Dauntless Shield. As you can tell, it only triggers once per battle now.
Yep. So with the Zamazenta switching out and switching back in, it will not get a +1 boost from its ability. So ultimately, Brendan's not in as bad of a position now after that turn.
The issue now, I think, comes down to, do you think that the Terrapagos lives a raw body press?
I would be inclined to say so, but it could be a little difficult. So we're going to see a protect just to, stall out a little bit. We'll see a close combat come out from the Urshifu that should pick up the Ting-Lu, and it does. So that is going to knock out the Treasure of Ruin Pokemon and remove Vessel of Ruin from play for the rest of the game.
If you're in Kenneth's position, though, I actually think that the ability to bring in Pelipper is actually a really positive thing for you now. You can bring Pelipper cleanly. You can just sit there and just keep spamming Wide Guard.
Yep.
And it's on the Urshifu to basically weaken itself from close combats enough where it can just get one shot.
So the trade-off then is going to be, does a close combat plus a +1 Earth Power knock out Zamazenta? Will be the next question. If it does, then this gets very, very interesting. So it's possible that the Zamazenta would have been better off going for the Urshifu earlier, but we're going to find out. We've probably got a couple turns left of this game, aside from maybe some stalling at the end game.
The Pelipper's in a very strong position to click Wide Guard here, though, which is why.
Very true.
Oh,
However,
that's not going to pick up, I don't think.
I don't think an Earth Power is going to pick up either, unless you just read that you're clicking Starstorm. You get a body press down. That's not enough damage to knock out there. You see a Hurricane go out. That is going to knock out the Urshifu by a long shot at -3 and in the rain. So let's see what the Terrapagos went for here. It's going to be Earth Power with a Stellar Boost.
Even Stellar Boost, I don't think is going to pick up.
I don't think this is going to pick up. A crit might have done it, but yeah.
If that was Starstorm, that was just game.
The problem is that Starstorm, if you click Starstorm close combat, then you can't knock out the Zamazenta, and that would have been game anyway. So it was a valiant effort by Brendan in honestly a pretty difficult matchup. But yeah, Helping Hand, you're just going to be able to keep firing off Helping Hand body presses for the rest of the game, and unless the Terrapagos maybe with like a triple protect might gain enough HP back, but I'm thinking this is probably going to be Kenneth's game to win. But we will see. So we're going to churn another turn of leftovers.
I guess the better question is, how much PP does Body Press have? I want to say it's 15.
It's 10. It's 10 or 15. They've got more than enough body presses. I don't think you could hit protect enough times to stall that out.
If you hit enough protects, at that point just buy yourself a lottery ticket.
Exactly. What are you doing here then?
I've hit a quadruple before.
I have hit a quadruple before in a game that didn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the worst time to hit it, but well.
I did mine at the end of a game 1 on a game I lost. I was like, I need to sit down and actually game plan the next game. I'm like, I'm just gonna go to time on every turn. My first move's protect, so if I time out, there you go.
Yep.
And with that though, Kenneth does press on to top cut.
Yep. So we'll at 3 and 2, we'll have to see how Kenneth's breakers look. But again, you couldn't get yourself into top cut position without winning. So, he put himself in his best possible position. And, we'll just have to see what happens. For Brendan, a good spirited effort. Kind of tough matchup. It is what it is.
I would wager to say that for the call mindset, though, Zamazenta is if you're a Terrapagos player, Zamazenta, if you're running the call mindset on Terrapagos, is the worst matchup you could look for.
Yeah. Exactly, because it's just so much instant offense. You're never going to be able to remove the resistance. And at some point or another, even if you're able to be disciplined and not Terra, they're just going to knock you out through Terra Shell anyway, because they get up to +4, +5.
Yeah, in that scenario, you absolutely need a way to stop the Zamazenta from even going.
Yeah.
I would actually wager to say that there could have been value, given that the Zamazenta Terra'd both games. I actually think there was potential in the team building phase before the event for Clear Smog if Brendan was, depending on how much Brendan expected to run into Zamazenta today, there would be merit for potentially running Clear Smog over Sludge Bomb to get rid of the boosts.
Clear Smog would have been good. I think also having Will-O-Wisp on the Ensign also would have made it an interesting decision. Obviously Ensign's not the best in that matchup, specifically because you kind of want the Terra on the Terrapagos. But like if you're generally able to like position around to where the instant gets to click Will-O-Wisp once, then like, that's something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like you probably just have to try to get more value out of the Screamtail because, like, honestly, the Screamtail really didn't end up doing much. It clicked Dazzling Gleam once, it clicked Encore and Disable and failed half of that, and then it just fainted.
I do believe that I think Brendan does have plans of going into NAIC, and I think this event is actually going to be some pretty good
I mean,
knowledge of like how to build a team, how to
Yeah, I mean,
continue progressing the team from
it's
here.
good. It's good information gathering. Like obviously, like one of the cool things about this being the Worlds format as well is you get a bunch of you get a bunch of tournaments, you get some amount of locals, you get an international, and you get Worlds for this format, and that may not even be the end of the format at that point. So players are able to, pick a team, pick an archetype they like,
And just run with it.
Yeah, and just iterate on that as much as they can up until, if he plans on going to NAIC, he's got another, 3 weeks or so before NAIC.
I want to say it's the start of June. June 7th sounds about right.
Yeah, so we're basically like 3.5 weeks away from that. So that's still plenty of time. There's always online tours. There's always, if you have good team building partners or a group or whatever,
Like even if it doesn't necessarily have to be in a tournament setting, or if you just have like a good team building group around you that you can just get together, do some games, do some sets.
Yeah,
I know my brother Daniel and I, we're each other's team building buddies usually, and we'll end up exactly doing that. That's how we usually get a lot of familiarity with the meta. We'll just play a bunch of the meta teams against each other.
Mm-hmm. And like obviously the more teams, you're not going to get the perfect practice off of that, but like just getting a working idea of what teams in the format do and how you want to build your team around beating those teams. You always have to build with what other people are doing in mind as well, unless you just have a team that you can just completely plow through what everybody is doing, which sometimes that can be a regional winning strategy. You look at like Rajan Ball's team.
Yeah, I was going to say Miradon literally just did that.
That team did not care what people were doing at all. It was just like, I'm going to click as much damage as I can and all your stuff's going to faint. And, turns out it worked out pretty well for him. But unless you run into a team like that with a metagame like that, where you can get away with that, because everybody had been disrespecting Miradon for a while. So it was kind of the perfect position for, nobody had really done their Miradon calc since like day one of the format. And then everyone remembered Rillaboom existed. And
there's like, Mirai who?
Yeah. So, with that being said, again, Kenneth is going to put himself into a position where he could slip into top cut at 3-2. Brendan's day is going to be over.
We just got to figure out who qualifies for top cut now, and then we'll actually be.
Yep. So
we'll be here to commentate the round after that.
Looks like there's 1 or 2 tables left. So we're going to go ahead and go to a short break. And when we come back, we'll have top cut announcements and a stream game. So thank you all for watching. This is the Florida VGC MSS here at Cool Stuff Games Maitland. So we'll see you all in a bit.
See you soon.